Okay. Let's go. We do not see the world as the world is. We see the world as we are. And I've mentioned this before, of course. This showed up in a different book. But I wrote it down again. Because it is very... I mean, think about it, right? Like, a lot of the time, the way you understand people is the way you understand yourself. The things that anger you about other people are the things that anger you about yourself. Not always, I mean. Annoy you. The things that you like in other people are usually things you like in yourself or you would like to see in yourself. The way you judge... Actually, there's a great quote. I wrote this down later on, but I'm going to read it again now. We judge ourselves for our intentions, and we judge others for their outward behavior. Which is why it's important to match your intentions with your outward behavior. So yeah, anyways. Our beliefs, like the things we believe are normal, may not be normal for other people based on how they've grown up. But we judge them based on what we believe to be normal, etc. Full of flaws versus full of life. Wait, what? So if you see something as full of flaws, so if you always focus on the flaws, then it's also likely that it's because you're focused on your flaws. If you focus on the flaws of others. Because that means that you view everything looking for the flaws. Usually. If you see things as full of life, is the way the book put it, but it's a little bit confusing, but if you look at the cool things, then it'll help you. Like, it'll help you look for the good things in yourself, I suppose. I'm not sure how true that one is, though. If you see the world as immutable, versus mutable. If you focus and see room for improvement as opportunities rather than the irresponsibility of others. For example, let's say you feel strongly about global warming. So you could, that means that there's a large room for improvement. You could look at it as an opportunity for you to do research or pioneer a field, maybe work on a certain product that helps with it, or you could just say everybody else, all of these people are just irresponsible. You could see humanity as a plague to the earth, the optimism versus the pessimism. If you see humanity as a plague to the earth, you probably aren't going to feel great about yourself. Or you can delude yourself into thinking you feel great about yourselves, but in reality you don't. Frustrating versus welcoming. If he says X, he must mean Y, or he must be Y. For example, he must be rude, or he must mean that you suck, or whatever. Because if you said X, that means that the condition for you to say X would be for you to be saying you're rude or whatever, etc. This is a bit convoluted. I don't even remember which book this was from, but these are the notes I wrote. What am I writing? Don't care how I feel? Oh, right. Okay, so if you blame other groups based on your experience, because you see the world as the way the world is. If you say like all men, all women, all black people, all white people, all politicians, all Christians, all atheists, all C-level executives, all large corporations, etc., whatever it is, you can fill in the blank, and then follow it up with like sucks. They suck because they blank. So it's like all blank sucks because they blank, and the first blank is some group of people or abstract institution that can be composed of people. And then the second part is something that you dislike about you've decided to dislike that group for because they don't care about the way you feel. They've made you feel that this group of people makes X decisions, and these decisions don't care about how you feel. Which sounds real stupid when you put it this way, of course. But it is something that people do. Avoiding happiness because of obligation or zero sum or belief that you are missing certain prerequisites for you to be happy. The fallacy is that being happy is a main determining factor for being a force for good. So, right, let's say you think you can't be happy because you're obligated to do X before you can be happy, or that there's only so much happiness that can go around. The fallacy here is that if you're unhappy, you're going to be more of a negative influence to those around you, and if you're happy, you're going to be a more positive influence. So, if you were to be happy, that is the net positive for what you want there to be more of. Whereas if you say, I can't be happy because then that would, I haven't done enough for the people around me. Like, being happy allows you to do more for the people around you. Nobody wants to be around someone who's unhappy all the time. How are you complicit in creating the conditions that you say you don't want? For example, let's say you don't want to work in a 9-to-5 job for the rest of your life. It's a random example. I'm not selling a course or anything like that, of course. Did you live your life in a way that sets you up for that? And are you living your life in a way that prevents that? So if the answer to the first one is yes and the answer to the second one is no, then you're complicit in creating the conditions that you say you don't want. By the way, this one is from Pathless Path, which, yeah, it was actually about jobs and, the alternative path that's not the default path of the 9-to-5 job, for example. So in this book, it had an example of an accountant who had to go into a room of executives and tell them that because of market conditions, because the company's not making as much money, that they're going to have to take, their salary is going to be $1 million instead of $5 million this year. And they were furious because for them, they deeply connected their salary to their personal worth. Which means for you to tell them that their salary was going down, it was to tell them that they were worth 5 times less as a person. They seek this kind of salary because they rely on it to define their value. And the reason he brings up this story is because he realized that when he was looking to, for example, quit his job and commit to earning money through other means because he was feeling empty in his job, he found that at first that the prospect of making less money was deeply offensive to him because he's worth more money because he made more money before. And then he had to stop and reflect on this and had to thought back to the story about the executives and thought to himself, damn, I'm like that too. So he had to stop and reflect when that happened. And that's how he brought up this story. Okay. Next. This one was me listening to a video about disagreeing or debating. Disagreement. Specify what you're disagreeing about so that other things don't contaminate the discussion and make it a brick-walled fight. For example, if you disagree and then you start bringing up other times you disagreed, you're no longer trying to resolve a disagreement. So you have to specify what you are disagreeing about. So that way you are looking at a particular problem and not on the fact that you're disagreeing with a person. Is the disagreement real or a misunderstanding? So after specifying, you have to first make sure that one person says something and another person says something, and it's not that you misunderstand what the other person says. You guys actually disagree. Is it important? Is the disagreement important enough to justify the disagreement or discussion? Like, is this topic, do I care enough about resolving this disagreement? And do you care about it? Like, is it of value to clear? Is it specific enough to address? And let's say two people disagree about something regarding presidential candidates. It's like, if you just disagree on who you like, but like neither of you really know that much about the presidential candidate, it's not specific enough for you to disagree. Or you can disagree, but you can't actually like discuss it properly if you guys don't have sufficient specificity or information. Are both parties aligned in their objectives for partaking in the disagreement? If one person wants to discuss it, or if one person wants to get the other person to say they're wrong, there's no point. So first of all, actually draw out the parameters of the disagreement and actually decide that it's worth doing. It's worth having. Next. Every disagreement needs to start with some agreement. For example, agreeing on the subject of the discussion. Agreeing on what it is that you guys disagree about. Or why you guys are having the discussion. So you have to start with some agreement. Some arguments, so this one is about debates, where, for example, if you research your facts and whatever, and your case, and they have their facts and case, you have to choose which points the other person made that you actually want to challenge. And some arguments aren't worth challenging. So it's the example one is, must this point that he made be resolved to make progress? For example, if I do not challenge it, is it possible for me to make progress without challenging it? And if no, then that means I have to challenge it. But if yes, if it is necessary, then, or if it's not necessary to challenge it, then does challenging it help us make progress? For example, so if it's needed to challenge, then you challenge it. If it's not needed, but it will help you if you challenge it, then you do it anyway. So those are the two questions. Listening is an active action and not a passive one. You need to understand the argument as they understand the argument, not the way you understand their argument. You can even you have to explain it back. You have to be able to explain their argument so that they feel that you understand their argument as they understand it. You can even understand. It's even better if you can make it sound like you understand it better than them. Set up this, because if they feel that you're using the straw man fallacy, for example, if you're talking about a point that they're not talking about or don't care about, then it's not going to convince anybody. So you have to focus on the best version of their side. Coming up with the best facts to support your side or your side of the truth is whatever. It's like you can have all of your facts, but it's ineffective if you don't know the other side, if you don't understand why they believe what they believe and how they understand the situation. No matter how many facts you have, if you don't understand it as they understand it, then you won't get anywhere. So that's why you have to question, what if you're wrong? Because even if you don't think you're wrong, even if you don't think you're wrong at all, you have to question it, because that helps put you in the mindset to better understand how they think about it. So you go, what would it take to prove to me that I'm wrong if this thing were true? So it's like, what given that it's true would convince me that I'm wrong, or be of sufficient evidence to counter my case. Okay, that's all on the debates. Let's see. This one is back to happy habits, or habits of a happy person. I can't be happy. I'm unhappy because I'm anxious, or I'm constantly feel pressured or threatened by the threats or whatever. I can't be happy because the threats will still exist even if I'm happy. So I have to stay vigilant, or else when I'm happy and my guard is down, the threats will just get me. So I have to stay vigilant. And I have to stay unhappy to defend myself against the threats. But here's the thing. Your focus, so when you're unhappy and anxious, your focus on these threats will make you miss new threats. You focus on old threats because your reward system is wired by it. For example, maybe you fended off this threat in the past and your system rewarded you for it. So you're not staying vigilant or anxious because you need to protect yourself against the threats, but it's actually because being vigilant about it is muscle memory, which is built through your body rewarding you for doing survival-based activities, which in this case is being worried or defensive against these threats. So you're not doing it to defend yourself, you're doing it because you're built to do it out of habit. And the other thing is that your memories already, it's more like you're seeking the reward of repeating the habits, like how the habit got built, which is the reward, rather than actually doing it for self-protective purposes. Because before, if you protected yourself against a threat, you would have to protect yourself against the same threat, and it was very life-threatening. So it rewarded you for doing it. You focusing on danger signals of old threats can be self-destructive. For example, jobs or relationships, let's say red flags from before, or let's say you got cheated on in the past, and that makes you very irritable whenever your partner is talking to someone else, for example. Or maybe you had a shitty boss before, so you're always avoidant with your new boss. So if you're constantly focused on danger signals of old threats, it's going to be self-destructive. Choosing to remain focused will show you signals where they don't exist While you'll still notice the right/important signals, even if you shifted your focus towards something good. So your muscle memory will still be able to see the negative signals, and the actual important ones you'll still notice, even if you don't focus on it and stay anxious. Let's say you're giving a public speech. Like, staying anxious about what if I fail this, what if I fail that, it's not actually going to help you produce a better speech. When you reach those bridges, if you have the memory of facing those things, then you'll still have the muscle memory of resolving those things. Being worried about it doesn't actually help you resolve those problems. Whereas if you remain focused on anxiety, you're going to see the signals for problems even if those signals don't exist, because again, you will find evidence if you look for it. Okay, last one. Why should I spend 45 days on a new habit if I may fail? Well, here's the question. Why do you expect yourself to succeed? Why do you require succeeding through doing it for 45 days for this attempt to be worth it? How do you define success at building a new habit? Making a mistake does not mean you failed. Making a mistake means you took a step closer to success. Because here's the thing. The goal, from your start point to the finish line, it's not a straight line. If you want to run $1 million business, it's not like you're going to, day one, you have a $100 business, day two, you have a $1,000 business, day three, you have 10. Now, obviously, these days aren't literal days, but you get the point, the timeline. It's not linear like that. Like, sometimes maybe, after 3 months of making a product, now you break even or something, and you have to figure out a problem to break through, and then maybe revenue goes down, you find a new problem, you fix it, and then maybe revenue starts going up, and so on. So it's not linear. So if you're trying to build a new habit for 45 days and you mess up on the 14th day, that doesn't mean it was a waste of time to start. It's just that you are 14 days closer to your habit. You just don't know how long the original path was. Maybe the original path just wasn't 45 days. Maybe your goal is to do it 45 days in a row, but that doesn't mean you're 45 days from reaching the goal of doing 45 days in a row. And if you imagine that originally it's an X amount of days for you to do it 45 days in a row. Maybe it's 140 days to do it in a row. You don't know how long it is, but if you keep doing it, you will reach the end goal. You just don't know the duration. And you're 14 days on that journey, on that 140-day journey, for example, to that having done it 45 days in a row. That's just an example. Okay. That's going to be it for today.